I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
I'm gonna keep my big BA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my bed so that y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need, we know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. Do I have Gordon Duff on the line? Hello, Gordon. Yeah, okay, let's try Gordon again. Okay.
Text plus text number. To reach them right now, text them at this number. To get your own free texting.
What? Alright. Let's try this again here. This has always worked for him before. But stranger things have happened here. My guest is supposed to be Gordon Duff with Veterans Today. But, seems to be difficulties on the line here.
Leave a message and I'll return the call.
Hello, Gordon. This is Clay Douglas, and you're supposed to be on my show now. Sorry we've miscommunicated or missed here, but if you will call me back at 520-413-2397 as soon as you get this message, or as soon as you get to a phone that's working, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. All right. Now, let me see here. What were Gordon and I going to talk about here? Let's see here. Alright. Bring this up. Been a strange weekend. Wasn't quite as relaxed as I had hoped. Wasn't quite as relaxed as I'd hoped. Got thrown out of another bar where I always go into on Sunday because of something I said last Sunday. And I don't remember exactly what it was that I said. Something like, get the fuck away from me, or something like that. Yeah, I'm working on etiquette courses, and how to tell somebody to kiss my ass. Gordon Duff is going to be my guest today, and he's talking about one of the strangest stories in financial history, the one involving the U.S. government lying about hundreds of thousands of tons of imaginary gold, illegal wire transfers, and loans totaling $15 trillion. Now, I'll play a video for you from the House of Lords, and it's amazing in itself. What it doesn't express is where the money came from through Lord James of Blackheath, though what it doesn't express is where the money came from, though Lord James of Blackheath proved conclusively that an effort was made to say it came from a gold reserve in Brunei that in fact never existed. On the surface, it appears we've stumbled across the largest terrorist organization in the world and found original documentation that's funded to the Secretary of the Treasury, the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, two of the top financial officers in the United States. A cursory review of terrorism statutes in the U.S. indicate that all transactions we will learn about are, in fact, to be assumed terrorist money laundering, and the only thing preventing the immediate arrest of hundreds of top financial officials is their political connections alone. We will be able to offer an alternative, more insight, some hard intelligence, and valuable background that we hope will offer insightful and realistic perspectives on this amazing story. On February 16, 2012, Lord James of Blackheath, member of Britain's House of Lords, presented evidence of an illegal scheme begun, he has thus discovered, in 2009. His documents, including originals signed by Alan Greenspan and Timothy Geithner, show the illegal off-the-book transfer of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York of $15 trillion initially to Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation in London, and then to the Bank of Scotland. The Bank of Scotland, under charter but restricted from involvement in such transactions, simply gave the money to 20 European banks to use in a highly profitable scheme of co-trading fresh-cut mid-term notes, generating trillions of dollars of profits over 3 years, and none of which is shown in the books, none of which is taxed or benefited shareholders in these banks. As Blackheath outlines, the deception cover for this transfer is the imaginary seizure of 750 tons of gold by agents of an unspoken entity confirmed by the highest officials as the Bush family and CIA, the listed source of the money. The government of Indonesia confirms that this is an utter fabrication and that the individual named had 700 tons of gold, about half of what Gaddafi was holding, not 750,000. It's noted that only 1,500 tons of gold have ever been traded in world history, as stated in the House of Lords. The issues that are initially brought out, issues inconsistent with the International Convention, is starting the reader on what is only the surface discovery aspects of 2 decades of crime involving dozens of governments are as follows. At no time has the Federal Bank of New York been authorized to hold the funds indicated. However, documents held by Lord Blackheath prove conclusively they did hold such funds and transfer them in a manner as to obscure their origin by using HSBC and the Bank of Scotland. A process seemingly involving Alan Greenspan, Timothy Geithner, and others would appear to be money laundering until some other explanation were found. None has been offered. The collateralization of these funds, being 750 tons of gold, is proven to be fantasy. These funds in no way or manner are related to Brunei. The presentation of this false transaction has been conclusively proven to be a cover and deception project such as an intelligence organization would use. The transfer of these funds, all done without authorization, governmental or otherwise, particularly without agreements, payment of interest to the United States, and without knowledge and approval of Congress, makes every aspect of this criminal in nature a violation of innumerable statutes. The receipt and the use of these funds by the 20 banks, 2 of which are Wall Street's largest, and the use of these funds to generate profits while the funds themselves were held off the books, and the profits hidden and launder themselves. The earnings of funds are received through criminal acts makes any and all involved part of a criminal conspiracy. This is Lord James of Blackheath, House of Lords, February 16th, 2012.
So I hope the minute that's taken hasn't come off my time, please. My Lords, I'm going to start, I don't wish you to get too encouraging, I'm going to start with my conclusions, but I'm not going to sit down when I've made them, because I'm going then to give you the evidence to support them, and hopefully present to you the reasons why I want support for an official inquiry into the mischief I want to unfold to yourselves this afternoon. My Lords, I've been engaged in this pursuit of this issue for nearly 2 years now, and I'm no further through to getting to the truth. I think there are 3 possible conclusions which may come from it. I think there may have been a massive piece of money laundering committed by a major government which ought to know better, and that this has effectively undermined the integrity of the British Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, in doing so. The second alternative is that a major American department has an agency which has gone rogue on it because it has been wound up and has created a structure out of which they are seeking to get, well, at least 50 billion euros as a payoff. And the third possibility is that this is an extraordinary elaborate fraud which has not been carried out, but which has been prepared in order to provide a threat to one government or more if they don't pay them off. So there are 3 possibilities, and this all needs a very urgent review. My Lords, it starts in April and May of 2009 with the alleged transfer to the United Kingdom, to the HSBC, of a sum of $50 trillion, and 7 days later, in comes another $50 trillion to the HSBC, and then 3 weeks later, another $50 trillion. Total of $5 trillion in each case. Total of $15 trillion is which have been passed into the hands of HSBC for onward transit to the Royal Bank of Scotland, and we need to look to where this came from and what the history of this money is, and I have been trying to sort out the sequence by which this money has been created and where it's come from for a long time. It starts off apparently as the property of a man called Johannes Riardi, who has some claims to be considered the richest man in the world. Well, he would be if all the money that was owed to him was paid, but I have seen accounts of his showing he owns $36 trillion in a bank, and it is a ridiculous sum of money. On the other hand, the $36 trillion would be consistent with the dynasty from which he comes and the fact that they have been effectively the emperors of Indochina in times gone by. But a lot of that money has been taken away from him with his consent by the American Treasury over the years for the specific purpose of helping to support the dollar. And he has sent to me a really quite remarkable document which is dated in February 2006, in which the American government has called into a meeting with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which is neither Federal Reserve nor a bank. It's a bit like Celebrity Big Brother. It's got 3 names to describe it, and none of them are true. And this document, which is quite astonishing, purports to be the meeting which is witnessed by Mr. Alan Greenspan, who signed for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, of which he was chairman, as well as the real Federal Reserve Bank in Washington. And it is signed by Mr. Timothy Geithner, who as a witness on behalf of the International Monetary Fund, who sent 2 witnesses, the other one being Mr. Yusuke Horiguchi. And these gentlemen have signed as witnesses to the effect that this deal is a proper deal. There are a lot of other signatures on here. This is not a photocopy, this is an original version of the contract, under which the American Treasury has apparently got the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to offer to buy out the bonds which have been issued to Mr. Riardi to replace the cash which has been taken from him over the previous 10 years, and they're giving him $500 million as a cash payment to buy out worthless bonds. Now, this is all in the agreement, and it's very remarkable. I would have thought establishing whether this is a correct piece of paper or not is just 2 phone calls away, one to Mr. Gattner and one to Mr. Greenspan, both of whom still prosper and live, so they could easily confirm whether they signed this. Mr. Rayardi has, by passing these bonds over, also put at the disposal of the US Treasury the entire asset backing which he was alleged to have for the 15 trillion. I now have a letter here from the Bank of Indonesia which says that the whole thing was a pack of lies, that he did not have the 750,000 tons of gold which was supposed to be backing it, he only had 700 tons. And this is really a piece of complete fabrication. Finally, I have a letter here from Mr. Rayardi himself, who tells me that he was put up to do this, and none of it was true, and that he has been robbed of all his money. And I'm quite prepared to recognise that one of the possibilities here is that Mr. Rayardi is himself putting this together as a forgery in order to go and try and win some recovery back. But it gets more complicated than that, because each of the 5 trillion payments that came in has been acknowledged and receipted by the senior executives of HSBC, and again receipted by the executives of the Royal Bank of Scotland. And I have a set of the whole of those receipts for all of this money. Why would any bank want to sign £5 trillion worth, $5 trillion worth, 15 trillion in total, of receipts if the money didn't exist? The money was said to have come, first of all, from the Rayardi account to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York it was passed through JP Morgan Chase in New York for onward transit to London. The means of sending it was a SWIFT note, which ought to have been registered with the Bank of England if it was genuine. So when this happened and came about, I first of all took it to my noble friend Lord Strathclyde and said, what do we do with this? He said, give it to Lord Sassoon, he's the Treasury. So we did, and Lord Sassoon looked at it and said immediately, this is rubbish, it's far too much money, it will stick out like a sore thumb, you can't see it in the Royal Bank of Scotland accounts. Quite right. Secondly, he said, the gold backing it is ridiculous, there's only been 1,507 tons of gold mined in the history of the world, so you can't have 750,000 tons. This is true. And the third thing he said obviously was, it's a scam. And I agree with him, it was a scam. The problem is we stopped looking at that way. We should have asked, what is the scam, instead of at that time just nodding it off. And we have never really resolved this, because today I have this quite slightly piece of paper, which is my justification for bringing it into this meeting today, which is available on the internet, and I'm astonished that it hasn't already been unearthed by the Treasury, and the alarm bell on the land should be ringing if it has, because this is the General Audit Office of the Federal Reserve, the real Federal Reserve in Washington, and its audit review in end of July 2010 on the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. It has on it some 20 banks listed, to which $16.115 trillion are outstanding in loans. My lords, that is the sore thumb that was being looked for by Lord Sassoon. But more particularly, there are 2 other very interesting things with this. The first is that Barclays Bank has got $868 billion of loan. The Royal Bank of Scotland has got $541 billion, in which case one has to ask, as they could have earned in 3 weeks enough to pay off their entire indebtedness to the taxpayers in Britain, why they have not done so. Could we please afterwards put a cheque in the post tonight for the whole 46 billion? And the third thing that's wrong with it is that every bank on this list, without exception, is an MTN registered bank, which means that they're registered to use medium-term notes to move funds between themselves with an agreed profit share formula. In which case, these banks are investing this money, and most extraordinary, not a penny of interest does the Federal Bank of New York want paid on this vast amount of 16 trillion. Anyone amongst yourselves who knows what the IMF rules are will immediately smell a rat. Because the IMF has very strict rules for validating dodgy money. There are two ways of doing it. You either pass it through a major central bank like the Bank of England, who had apparently not refused to touch this, or alternatively, you put it through to a bank which is an MTN trading bank, and which is then able to use the funds on the overnight European MTN trading market, where they can earn between 1 and 2.5% profit per night. And the compound interest on that is huge. So there is a vast profit being made with this money somewhere if it is in fact genuine. But my lords, I believe that this is such an important issue now that I can put everything I've got on the subject into 104 megabytes memory foam, and I want the government to put this to some suitable investigative bureau and take everything I've got on the subject and find out what the truth is of what is going on here, because there is something very seriously wrong. Either we have a huge amount of tax uncollected on profits made, or we have a vast amount of money festering away in the European banking system which is not real money, in which case we need to take it back. My lords, I ask for an investigation and please support my plea.
Just to recap a little bit on that. On February 16, 2012, Lord James of Blackheath, member of Britain's House of Lords, presented evidence of an illegal scheme begun, he discovered, in 2009. His documents include originals signed by Alan Greenspan and Timothy Geithner, show the illegal off-the-books transfer by the Federal Reserve of New York to $15 trillion initially to Hong Kong, Shanghai Banking Corporation, London, then to the Bank of Scotland. The Bank of Scotland, under charter but restricted from involvement in such transactions, simply gave the money to 20 European banks to use in a highly profitable scheme of co-trading fresh-cut mid-term notes, generating trillions of dollars in profits over 3 years, none of which is shown in the books, none of which has been taxed or has benefited shareholders of these banks. As Blackheath outlines, the deception and cover for this transfer is the imaginary seizure of 750,000 tons of gold by agents of an unspoken entity, and that would be the Bush family and the CIA. The government of Indonesia confirms this to be utter fabrication, and the individual named had 700 tons of gold, about half of what Gaddafi was holding, not 750,000. It's noted that only 150,000 tons of gold have ever been traded in world history, as stated in the 1,500 tons of gold have ever been traded in world history as outlined in the state of the House of Lords. The issues are initially brought out, issues consistent with international convention and more discovery. There's no record of the Federal Reserve being authorized to create 15 trillion, equal to the entire national debt of the United States. There is, however, proof that funds totaled at one time 27 trillion that had been earned surreptitiously. And remember, we got the drug trade in there too, folks. And this is a big part of it. They're funding these drugs. They're bringing them in. They've got the network set up. CIA set them up. They bring them in. And with all the traffic in illegal drugs, 18 people a day. 18 people a day die in America from prescription drugs. Now, the author here, Gordon Duff, who was supposed to be on my show today, let's try him real quick and see if maybe I can get him up for a second. We'll try him. Maybe he was just caught in traffic. Who knows? He lives on the East Coast, so we'll try this. Strange that it takes so long to ring through to him. Hello, Gordon.
Yes, Clay.
How are you? I'm sorry, I was afraid you got caught in a spring storm or something.
God. No, I usually sleep till like 2 in the afternoon. Hold on a second, Clay.
All right, sir.
Call you back, Steve. Okay. I'm with my brother. I reminded my wife about this today.
I did.
God.
I did send an email. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. But
no, you're always good.
I have already played the whole video up on from Veterans Today. I've given everybody that site, and this is Lord James of Blackheath. Talking about $15 trillion. This is how much money is this? I mean, my God, here, this is pretty incredible. There's no record of the Federal Reserve being authorized to create $15 trillion.
So are we on live radio right now?
Yes, sir. You are. Yes, sir. We are.
Oh my goodness! I haven't even had coffee yet. I'll sound like a drunk. You know, the Blackheath thing, the critical thing about I'll see. We're
okay,
we'll reach in. No, we're going to reach in, find that hit of adrenaline here. You know, being a Vietnam veteran, which of course, like both of us, means that we're both not young. My other habit is I sit up till like 5 o'clock in the morning and watch these stupid Iron Chef and diners, drive-ins, and dive shows just to learn how to cook food that I'm not allowed to eat anymore. You know, just to see what food's like.
Well, see, now you see there, we're about the same age, but I've been smoking pot for 40 years, and I'm so healthy I can't even qualify for medical marijuana because I have never seen a doctor.
Well, we don't have that here in Ohio. They've got it in Michigan, and it's hard to describe this thing going on in the Middle West here. And I'm taking you off subject. I bet I know, but I do think it's good radio to do that.
That's right.
We have this governor thing here. Kasich is his name, and then there's Snyder in Michigan, and then Walker in Wisconsin. And this thing I've gone through, you know, Veterans Day comes out of the intelligence community. It was begun by the Special Forces community in 2003. A group settled in Mexico. That's where we have our servers, and that's what keeps us. It probably keeps us free anyway. That we don't take money from anybody at all, which because we're not as smart as your radio station guys. But
I'm not getting any money either. That's probably the most frustrating thing to me. You know, trying to run this, keep it running, because I've always made money. You know, I've always done really well in business and all that. And until just recently, and what we're going through, I think, and I was really looking forward to having you on today, because it's. I feel like I'm under. This is I'm under psychological warfare. A friend of mine who'll be on a couple of days from now calls it gang stalking, organized gang stalking, to try to keep somebody down, to drive their advertiser away, drive any of their support away, or drive them to suicide.
Oh, we've got that happening on your network. Mike Harris, I think, is going to be coming over there with you now from Republic, and another. And I don't want to get into too much tale-telling, but another host who I suspect from his opinions tends to shy away from the rest of us here who've been working this long, and I even get this now from friends who retired FBI, and 8 years ago when I was talking about 9/11 being a conspiracy, probably 6 years ago, we got clear admissions from friends in Israel that they were involved. Some